All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're zooming in on something that seems almost minuscule on a golf club, but it's arguably one of the most crucial pieces of
There
engineering.
really is.
I'm talking about the grooves, the little lines cut into the face of your irons and wedges.
It's a perfect example of microdesign having a macro impact. I think a lot of people just assume they're,
Yeah.
decorative.
Right, just for looks.
Exactly. But they are engineered to dictate everything, the ball flight, the spin, and really how the ball behaves when it finally hits the green.
We all know the club's what gives the ball its speed and its launch angle, but that's really only half the story.
Mm-hmm.
The real physics superstar here is backspin.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just talking about some vague force. We mean actual aerodynamic lift. It's the spin that keeps the ball in the air longer, gives you that predictable flight, and then critically acts like a braking system when it lands.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to go beyond just defining grooves. We're going to unpack the real performance differences between the three big historical shapes, that's square, U, and V.
And explain why those shapes create such different shots.
Fundamentally different shots, yeah. To the point where governing bodies like the USGA and the RNA had to step in and change the rules.
Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Before we start comparing the shapes, we have to ask the most basic question. Why are they even there? Why do we need these channels at all?
Right.
Why not just a perfectly smooth, polished club face?
It really all comes down to guaranteeing clean contact, which, is almost impossible in the real world of golf.
Sure, you got dew, wet grass.
Dewy mornings, fairways that aren't perfect, or
Yeah.
you're hitting out of the rough. There's almost always a little bit of moisture or dirt or grass that wants to get between the ball and the club face at impact.
So the groove's first job is just to get that stuff out of the way. It's like the tread on a tire.
That is the perfect analogy. The grooves are these tiny little channels, and their job is to move water and debris out of that impact zone in those critical milliseconds.
Yeah, the size of the groove determines how well it does that job.
The volume, the depth, yeah. It determines how effective they are at clearing everything out.
Okay, so cleaner contact means more friction. And that's the engine of backspin, right?
That is the critical link. By clearing that debris, the sharp edges of the grooves can get a much better bite on the cover of the golf ball.
A grab.
A real grab. And that huge increase in friction leads directly to higher backspin. And that spin isn't just for show. It's what lets you hit an approach shot, watch it fly to the pin, and then stop.
Or even check up and back up a few feet.
Exactly.
So it sounds like without grooves, you'd not only lose control, you'd lose all predictability.
Oh, completely. If you hit an iron with no grooves, especially from a wet lie or out of the rough, the ball would just it would skid across the face.
Like hydroplaning.
It's a lot like that. And that little slide causes this massive, unpredictable loss of spin. It's the flyer lie effect. You get inconsistent flight, a much lower trajectory, and absolutely zero stopping power. Grooves deliver consistency.
That makes perfect sense. So now let's get to the fun part, the battle of the shapes. There are three main designs that have sort of dominated golf history. Let's start with the one that literally forced a rule change. The square groove.
Ah, the square groove.
So,
Or, as it was often called in its early days, the U groove. It was engineered for one thing and one thing only: maximum friction.
what are its characteristics? What makes it so aggressive?
They have these flat bottoms, really wide profiles, and this is the key. They were designed with extremely sharp, almost 90-degree edges.
That sharpness has to be the secret sauce then. It's like having tiny little knife edges digging into the ball's cover.
Precisely. That sharp edge radius generates the absolute highest rates of backspin possible. And that's huge for a couple of reasons. One, you get that high ball flight with a really steep landing angle.
And
two, it's a massive advantage out of the rough. The sheer volume of that groove and the sharpness of the edge just cuts through the grass and maintains spin way better than any other shape.
So for precision, for shaping shots, for that guaranteed stopping power, the square groove was king. But there had to be a trade-off, right? Something that made the rule makers step in.
The trade-off is distance, mostly. You gain all this amazing control, but the super high spin rate actually slows the ball's forward velocity down a little bit.
So less carry.
Less carry and way less rollout after landing. You're sacrificing yards for braking power. But more importantly, the effect was just deemed too powerful, especially from the rough.
So the governing bodies intervene. Can you give us a little context on that?
There.
Because it's a huge moment in golf history.
It is. We're talking about the 2010 groove rule change from the
Yeah.
USGA and the R&A. They basically decided that the amount of spin you could get from the rough with these sharp, deep grooves, well, it was reducing the penalty for missing the fairway.
Right, players could still get massive spin even from a bad lie?
Phenomenal spin. I mean, think of players like Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson at the time. They could stop balls on a dime from the deepest lies with those clubs.
That's a huge shift in the philosophy of the game. They basically standardized the grooves to bring back the penalty for hitting it in the thick stuff.
That's right. After 2010, the new rules forced the groove edges to have a minimum radius. That means they had to be a little bit rounded, a little duller, less aggressive. And that limited the spin potential, which is why some of those older pre-2010 clubs are so sought after by amateurs.
So if square was the powerhouse, how did engineers find a balance that would still work under the new rules? And that brings us to the modern U-groove.
The modern U-groove is the compromise, you could say. It's designed to be conforming, but still very functional. It's defined by a deeper and wider bottom compared to a V-groove, which makes it great at clearing out debris.
So it's the middle ground. It balances spin and distance.
Perfectly. They generate good, solid spin. You get a mid-range landing angle. It's not the steep, hard-checking stop of the old square grooves, but it's still more than enough control for most golfers to manage the ball effectively.
And what about performance from the rough? Because that's where the old ones got into trouble.
They do pretty well. Better than V-grooves, for sure. Because they are deeper and wider, they can still channel away a good amount of grass and moisture to maintain friction. But because of that edge radius rule, they still won't give you that almost perfect spin you got from the older designs. It's an engineered compromise.
Which brings us to our third type, the V-groove. Since the rules pushed everyone towards duller edges, what's the V-groove's design philosophy?
The V-groove is all about distance. It's characterized by these angled sides and a narrower, shallower profile, and that geometry just inherently produces the lowest spin rates of the three.
And that lower spin directly impacts ball flight. Flatter trajectory, flatter landing angle. So if you're a golfer who needs maximum carry and more rollout, the V-groove is your friend.
Exactly. And that can be a strategic choice. If you play on soft courses where the ball just stops anyway, or if your game is built around maximizing yardage on your approaches, V-grooves are really efficient. But there's a big control trade-off.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, because the spin is lower, the V-groove offers you less help on your attack shots. You can't just rely on the club's design to grab the ball and stop it.
So you have to provide the spin yourself.
You have to rely much more on your swing technique, hitting down on it sharply, to generate that braking action, because the club face itself is just less aggressive.
Okay, so let's put this all together for everyone listening, because this is where it really clicks. We've got three designs, and their performance is directly tied to the shape of the channel.
Let's do a quick matrix. For spin rate, you have the old square grooves as the highest, the modern U-groove as moderate, and the V-groove as the lowest.
Which means the landing angle is steepest for square, mid-range for U, and flattest for V.
And this is so important. For rough performance, the pre-2010 square was very good, modern U-grooves are good, and V-grooves are the least effective because their narrow shape just can't clear out debris as well.
So the recap is simple. You want steep landing and stopping power. You chase high spin like the old square design. You need distance and rollout. You accept lower spin like the V-groove. It's a fundamental choice based on your game and your course.
Right. And that brings up how the industry adapted after 2010. You mentioned micromilling earlier.
Yes. They restricted the big grooves, so the manufacturers just got really, really focused on the surface between the grooves.
They got creative. The rules limited the depth and sharpness of the main grooves, but they didn't say anything about adding texture to the rest of the club face. So micromilling is basically creating these incredibly fine, aggressive friction patterns, tiny lines, dots, laser-etched textures on the flat areas.
So the big grooves clear the big debris, and then the micromilling gets that last little bit of friction once the ball is pressed against the face. It mimics the lost spin.
It was a brilliant engineering workaround. It really helped save the short game for a lot of players. If you look at any premium wedge today, they're always talking about their aggressive milling patterns. It's the modern way to get friction within the rules.
Okay, let's turn this into some practical takeaways for everyone listening. Number one has to be about maintenance.
Oh, this is absolutely non-negotiable. If we've established that a groove's entire purpose is to clear debris to increase friction, then letting dirt and grass get packed in there is just self-sabotage.
You're literally turning off the technology of your club.
Exactly. You're neutralizing the design. Keeping your irons and wedges clean, especially in wet conditions, might be the single best and cheapest thing you can do for your game. That packed dirt kills your spin.
Takeaway number 2 is about choosing the right tool. If your home course has really firm, fast greens, the kind where a near miss just rolls off the back, you have to prioritize spin.
In that situation, you should be looking for clubs with the deepest, widest conforming grooves you can find. And definitely look for that aggressive surface milling. You need that checkup ability.
And on the flip side,
Conversely, if you play links golf where you want the ball to run out, or if you're just focused on getting a few extra yards of carry, you might intentionally go for a design with less aggressive spin, like a modern V-groove type.
our final takeaway circles back to the rules. Just understanding why that 2010 rule change happened is key. It was designed to make golf harder by rewarding players who hit the fairway.
Knowing that context helps you understand your own clubs. When you hear a club is non-conforming, it doesn't mean it's illegal for you to play with your friends. It just means the design was so effective it got restricted from top-tier competition. It shows how sensitive this whole interaction is.
So wrapping it all up, grooves are this critical piece of engineering. They dictate spin, flight, and how soft the ball lands. Understanding the difference, square for stopping power, U for balance, V for distance, helps you pick the right tools and, just as importantly, maintain them.
Absolutely. So if choosing the right groove can so dramatically change your approach shots, here's a thought to take with you. If engineers had to invent complex micromilling to get back the friction lost from those rule changes, what simple, immediate action can you take with your current clubs to get a measurable increase in spin and control?
It's more than just a quick wipe with a towel.
Maybe it's not just a brush. Maybe it's a deeper scrub with some soapy water tonight to make sure those edges are as sharp as they can be for tomorrow's round.
That is a great note to end on. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you next time.